You're listening to Real Ones, presented by FanDuel. America's #1 sportsbook is the best place to bet on the NBA because not only does FanDuel have all your favorite player props, but now you can even check out stats and recent performance trends right in the app before you make your picks. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app today to get in on the action. The Ringer is committed to responsible gaming. Please visit rg-help.com to learn more about the resources and helplines available. And listen to the end of the episode for additional details. Must be 21 plus and present in select states. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit rg-help.com.
Welcome to the brand new Zach Lowe Show. That's right, I'm back to have the same in-depth NBA conversations you're used to. We're going to talk about the games. Yeah, the games, the X's and O's, the drama, the trades, the playoffs are coming up. And now you get to see every episode in full on video on Spotify and on my own YouTube channel. Episodes drop every Monday and Thursday with a collection of guests you're going to love. So make sure you follow and subscribe to the brand new Zach Lowe Show on Spotify or wherever you watch or listen to your podcast. Let's go!
What's poppin'? Real Ones, Logan Murdock here. Raja Bell there. Howard Beck in the motherfucking cut. Just want everybody to know that we had a episode already in the can, ready to go. I was on the Madden. Raja was somewhere living his best life in Florida. And then this news drops. Mike Malone and Calvin Booth have been fired. Yes, you've heard that. Somehow we're the podcast where people just get fired. Either in the middle of our recordings or like right when we're editing them. This is just what happened. So we're recording a quick 30-minute topper to figure this shit out. Howard, welcome back. The streets was like, oh, man, he's going to Zach Lowe. Fuck that. He's still one of ours, all right? Fuck that shit. Howard, what the hell is happening here? What's going on? You said you're going to save it for the pod. What's going on here?
Good Lord. Can I just start there? Holy fuck. What the fuck? Every fuck. There are not enough expressions with the F word in it to properly convey reactions today. Like, we thought the Luka trade would be like the most baffling moment we would see, not just this year, but for the next decade. Then the Grizzlies fired their coach with 9 games to go. And we thought, oh my God, no one does that. What the hell's going on in Memphis? Firing your coach with 9 games to go when you're going to make the
Denver
playoffs.
says, hold my beer. Hold my Coors. Hold my Coors Light. Here.
Big keg, of course. Hold my keg. Like, they didn't even stop at firing the coach. They fired the GM too, with days left, not 9 games, which was what Memphis did. Days left, and Denver's got a higher ceiling in the playoffs than Memphis does too, which means there's more at risk when you're just blowing everybody out days before the postseason. Like, this is absolutely baffling. So here's what I can tell you. In the little that I know, the little that I've been able to gather before we signed on very hastily here. This is not earth-shattering, this part. Calvin Booth, Michael Malone, not on the same page. That's putting it kindly. These two have not gotten along their entire time together. There is, as I understand it, no communication and no trust there at all. So the idea that you might fire the coach while still insane this close to the playoffs, at least I would have maybe understood that if there's too big of a disconnect between the coach and the front office. That they're also firing Calvin Booth, I'm just going to start, because we are doing this literally on the fly. And I want to make this clear. I am shifting from what I think I know to what I'm now going to speculate on, and I think reasonably. If you're firing both of them, and we already know those two do not get along and have no relationship, that tells me that somebody up above who is employing both of these gentlemen decided enough's enough. Your horrible relationship, your lack of trust, your lack of communication, in addition to whatever late season struggles, in addition to maybe we already have resolved, as Memphis said they did, that we're going to do it after the season anyway. We'll just do it now. Rip the Band-Aid off. It seems to me that this is the Nuggets ownership and other leadership that is not Calvin Booth and Michael Malone saying, enough's enough. We've had it with both of you. And you guys aren't leading us anywhere good, and you're not going to be leading us out of it no matter where things go this postseason. All that said, it still seems to me to be absolutely patently freaking insane to fire your GM and head coach with just single-digit days left in the regular season when you are still one of the top teams in the Western Conference and still a team with a puncher's chance to at least make the conference finals with the best player on the planet. It's bonkers.
Raja, we just went through a version of talking about this in real time when the Memphis Grizzlies made their move, me, you, and Sheed. I feel like we're going to regurgitate a lot of that conversation. But what comes to mind specifically with this team right now making this move with a talent like Nikola Jokic, with the ceiling that they have? I mean, no matter what, they still get the benefit of the doubt that they can make a run to the conference finals or the finals just because Nikola Jokic is on their roster. What the hell is going on? What do you think about this specific move at this specific time for this specific team?
Look, I will reiterate what I said about the Memphis situation. I think it's stupid. I think it's as dumb as you could get. There's no world, no realm in which you can convince me that team is going to be better, because you use the verbiage, we want to give our team a better chance to win in the playoffs. Like I read a quote, was it Kroenke that had a quote like that about like, that's bullshit. Miss me with that. Now, if you had come out and said, hey, look, the level of toxicity around here is just too high. Like, we don't believe that there's any world in which, we can be competitive. And to Howard's point, we're going to do this now. Like, I still tell you it's stupid, but okay, I get that. But you trying to convince someone that this is giving your team a better chance to win in a playoff stretch where you are viable to some degree, that's stupid. That's ridiculous. And trying to convince anyone of that is just disrespecting someone's intelligence. I don't believe that for a second. I would go back to the Memphis situation. Okay, like Cal Booth and Malone didn't get along. I mean, that's fine. You're canning both of them. Like, there had to be some sort of blow up. This isn't like an accumulation of incidents and, okay, something happened. There's a point, there's a moment, there's an incident that took place within that organization recently that blew up to the point where it was like, okay, shit, guys, well, fuck, we got to do this. Like that's not an accumulation of many incidents and disgruntledness, if that's a word, and people just disagreeing on certain things. And we've had enough 3 games before the playoff starts. Don't insult my intelligence.
Yeah, it's like, unless they were like literally fist fighting, unless Calvin Booth and Michael Malone were literally like fist fighting in the parking lot or something. Or,
even then, like, yo, we'll figure this out for the rest of the season, bro. Like, relax.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like the other thing, like, and this happens, and again, like, I'm on wild conspiracy theory shit, but like, and I'm traditionally like, that's not who I am. I'm not that guy, but like, it does happen at times, Howard, you know this, Logan, probably you too, that someone in an organization has someone in higher up in the organization's ear in a way that they chop out the legs of people that are in their way to something that they want. And if those two were making a mess between themselves and took their eyes off of the real threat, which was someone else in there positioning for it,
i.e. Jeremy Lamb in Sacramento, potentially. Is that what you're saying? So somebody like that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not really like, I won't be tapped in on that level all the time, but if Jeremy Lamb did that, but yeah, that's what I'm talking about. I don't know who. I'm not saying that definitely happened, but it could be one of those two, right? Like, you two were over there like quarreling with each other, and this dude was sitting right next to Kroenke the whole time, fucking stabbing you both in the back. I don't know.
So the Calvin Booth era, if you will, with the Nuggets, Howard, has been characterized by trying to maintain a roster and maintain a team that is cash-strapped because they're just over the cap, right? They have big contracts in Michael Porter Jr., Aaron Gordon. A lot of that had to do with Tim Connolly, right? So he is trying to build this roster, around Nikola Jokic to varying levels of success, right? Where you have to get Russell Westbrook for the cheap, right? Like, their biggest bench guy is Christian Braun, right? Who is pretty up and down as a player, but they don't really have much of a bench because they've committed so much money to their starting lineup. And that's kind of been the tale of his GM tenure. Reading the tea leaves now, like, I'm talking specifically about the general manager role. We're going to get to the Mike Malone role in a second. But do you think because he didn't make maybe the savvy move to trade to get a deeper team really led to his demise. If you're thinking about this just as we're trying to figure this out in real time.
I'm trying to remember. So Calvin Booth replaced Tim Connolly as GM in 2022, right? So right before they go on their championship run season. So Connolly had put together most of this team, but I think it was Calvin who acquired KCP, right? Am I remembering that correctly? Again, we're doing this on the fly and we have not.
So Connolly went to the Timberwolves in, I believe, September of 2021, fall of 2021.
All right. In any case, I think Booth put, if I remember correctly, we'll clean this up as we go. I think Booth is the one who got put the finishing touches on that, right? Like Jamal Murray and Jokic are there. Gordon is there. I believe that was a Tim Connolly move. Porter Jr. is there, and Calvin Booth was part of his front office, so he gets
assistant GM
credit for this as assistant GM. But I think his big move after taking over, if I'm remembering correctly, was getting KCP, so that fifth key player in the starting lineup. Excuse me. But he's also on the back end of this, right? So it's, this is not to absolve Calvin Booth of blame. This is not to direct blame in any particular direction. But after you win the championship, the toughest thing for the Nuggets has been the attrition, right? They couldn't keep Bruce Brown. That was a salary cap issue. Not much they could have done. They couldn't keep Jeff Green. So they've lost their sixth and seventh man. The following summer, they lose their fifth man or fourth, wherever you wanted to put KCP in the pecking order. So now you've lost 3 of your top 7 players in a 12-month span, partially due to cap issues that they had no control over. But in the case of KCP, it was more of do the Nuggets think that he's worth all the extra luxury tax hits and, apron stuff and everything else, right? So they let him walk. You can make a good argument that they've been vindicated on that. Like, KCP hasn't had the greatest season in the world for Orlando, and Christian Brown looks like Braun, has really popped this season for the Nuggets. So you can make the case that, hey, we think we've got the younger, cheaper alternative here, and that helps us manage our cap and our tax situation. And I think they've pretty much been vindicated on that. But yeah, under Calvin Booth's watch, they haven't really been able to plug in or acquire other impact players. They've lost more impact players than they've gained. The Westbrook thing has worked out pretty well. Dario Saric, not so well. And it's a mixed bag, but I don't think on balance you're firing Calvin Booth because of personnel decisions made or not made. I don't think you're firing him based on the record right now. I think you're firing him, again, we're speculating here on the fly. I think you're firing him because this organization has become incredibly dysfunctional with too much palace intrigue between the front office and the coach. And so now they're both gone.
Yeah, I mean, look, what do you want me to say? Look, Calvin, I would agree with you, Howard, in that, like, not everything has been perfect, but you won a championship. Like, when you win a championship as an organization, as a coach, as a a franchise star, there is, there's some road that you get in front of you to continue the efforts, right? Like, can we agree that when that happens, like, there's a reset button to some degree that gets hit, right? Like, damn, Denver got a championship. All right, cool. It buys you some grace with the fan base in a way. It also, pressures mount because you have that type of team and you have to figure out ways to creatively, continue to stay in the hunt for it. But I think ultimately, if you told me, hey, I was going to get 4 years of a GM and he was going to win a championship, like, you're going to take that. Like, if you, at the end of it, you had to say, was that a failed experiment or was it a successful one? Like, that's success. And so, like, we can get into, like, how dysfunctional and stuff it is. And Howard, you're more tapped into that than I am. And clearly, if it reaches a certain level, everything has to, be reevaluated and you must move accordingly. But overall, I would just say, as we're doing this on the fly, the Cal Booth experiment, for whatever, like the Cal Booth tenure there, that's a success.
My thing is this, though, like, what is with the new vibe of we're going to fire all these people in season in the weeks leading up to the playoffs thing? Like, whatever you say, right? Like, this team just hit a ceiling and the losing streak that has happened over the last couple of weeks. I feel like the Nuggets and Mike Malone have earned enough cachet to see this through at least this season. And I know there's reporting also out that and this is from Chris Haynes, one of the reasons why, or at least a Nugget, I don't know if this is the reason why he got fired, but Calvin Boone and the Nuggets failed to reach an extension this season, right? And whatever that means. But like, what does either side gain from this? I mean, we see what's going on right now with the Grizzlies and how they've kind of struggled to maintain any level of consistency after Taylor Jenkins gets fired. What is the upside of firing a coach and a GM with this close to the postseason and not at least seeing it through? Because the Nuggets deserve the benefit of the doubt on that.
In the case of the Grizzlies, we talked about this last week. And, as you guys know, I talked to some people and the sense I got was that the Grizzlies determined not only were they going to fire Taylor Jenkins after the season anyway, but they felt like things were so the tension or the concerns were so great that they made the call, the decision, the judgment that they really did need to do it immediately, that there was an upside. We can all disagree with that, and I still think it's questionable, but their feeling was it was untenable to keep going. If that's what the Nuggets, maybe that will be their explanation too when we eventually get a little bit more insight on this. I get it, but in this case, it's even harder to justify. It's one thing in the case of the Grizzlies where it's been up and down. Sure, Taylor Jenkins has been the only coach that John Morant and most of those guys have known, but it's not like they've done anything. Michael Malone literally is the coach who led you to your first championship just 2 years ago and has a deep history with your franchise player. I think there have been some questions.
History.
Yeah, greatest player in franchise history.
And greatest coach too, probably in franchise history too.
I think he's the winningest and maybe the longest tenured. So there is risk in this case. Now they're promoting David Adelman, who's been on staff for a long time and I'm sure has a good relationship with Jokic, but Malone is the guy who shepherded Jokic from obscure second round pick to best player in the world. And, I think that there have been some concerns with, like, Malone is very old school, right? And old school coaches have a lifespan usually in this league with the newer generation of players who don't always necessarily respond to that well. So it can be tough. And he's lasted way longer than most. I think Malone had been with them for like 10 years now, which is, extreme outlier in today's NBA. So I think there was some sense that maybe Malone was grading on some of those players, but I think Jokic was still his guy. So you are taking some risk in alienating your franchise star. On top of it, it just looks like extreme instability. We've got days to go in the regular season and we just blew out everybody. Like, what's the message that's sending to Jokic and to the rest of your players? Not suggesting that this means that we're going to see
Raja's seething right now. Raja's seething right now.
No, go. I'm not trying to interrupt. Go. Go, Howard.
Not saying this means that we should now put Jokic on the watch list for this summer, but it's not great. And maybe you're doing it to head off that eventuality. But again, firing everybody on April 8th of an NBA season that ends on April...
The play-in is next week,
Sunday
bro.
Sunday, where it's Tuesday, and the season ends Sunday. This screams instability. This screams dysfunction. This screams maybe we didn't know what we were doing, because if it was this bad, we shouldn't have let it get this far. I don't get it. I don't get it at all. And this is a team that has absolute, it's shaky right now, but absolute plausible run to at least the conference finals, if not back to the finals. And you just pulled the rug out from under everyone.
Raja, I'm going to read this to you before you make your point, though. I want to read I want to read the statement to you before you make your point. I know you read it, but I want to read it for the listening audience. It'd probably make you even more mad. While the timing of this decision, this is from Josh Kroenke, Denver Nuggets owner. While the timing of this decision is unfortunate, as Coach Malone helped build the foundation of our new championship level program, it is a necessary step to allow us to compete at the highest level right now. Championship level standards and expectations remain in place for the current season. And as we look to the future, we look forward to building the foundation laid by Coach Malone over his record-breaking 10-year career in Denver.
Stop playing with me, boy. Listen, like you when you said the part in the middle there about right now and this gives us the best chance, and you actually put a timetable on that being the immediate future, you're lying now. Now you're lying. If you said something about moving over into the next, wave of what we're going to look like as an organization and stuff like that, we can have the debate. But when you tell me that's going to help you guys win a championship right now and be the best version of yourselves right now, you're lying. Howard, welcome to team. This is some dumb shit. You weren't there last week. Maybe this met the threshold for you, but welcome to the fucking team, homie.
I was just reporting what I heard last week, Raja. I wasn't trying to justify it. I was simply telling you what I'd heard.
No, I can dig it, but this is some dumb shit, as it was last week. It's stupid, right?
This is worse.
And it is worse, but like they're both dumb. And so if you're going to tell me anything short of we were going to lose Ja Morant if we kept that coach for the next 9 games, and he wouldn't want to be here anymore, anything short of that, stupid. If you're going to tell me, hey, I'm losing Nikola Jokic, and only fucking Nikola Jokic, I don't give a shit about Michael Porter Jr., I don't give a shit about Brown, I don't give a shit about Jamal Murray, I don't care about none of them. If you told me by keeping Michael Malone and or Cal Booth, we will lose Nikola Jokic, fire their asses. If you're not telling me that, stupid.
Fair.
It's beautiful. What if a lot of the noise right now that you're hearing in real time is that Michael Malone lost the locker room and lost the players around him. And I mean, you could see it in the last part of and this alludes to Howard motherfucking Beck's point about, where the team was and just the whispers and all that stuff. But that's been like the whispers around the league too, that he was losing his locker room, that he was losing this locker room and losing where they are. And why, if that's the case, and I'm just playing Raja level devil's advocate here, Raja. If he lost the locker room, then what? Then do you do this right now, or do you just wait?
No, but
wait
that's listen.
Month?
I get that. Like I know I got it. Like that, and that's a real thing, and it happens. Like I detailed a situation where I wasn't on a staff and I had to come in as a consultant on that. That absolutely happens, and that can be true. But firing him right now is not giving you a better chance in these playoffs. That's what I'm telling you. If you say to me, hey, this has to be done, and we know that it's an inevitability when this season is over because these cats won't play for him next year, like, I got it. Do what you got to do. But as it were, right now, today, going into the playoffs in a couple, no, you can't convince me of that. I'm sorry. It doesn't happen like that.
From a functionality standpoint, and I think you're a great voice for this, Raja. A shakeup like this in the locker room. Now you're in the Nuggets locker room, putting you in the Nuggets locker room. What does this shakeup do on a day-to-day standpoint this late in the season versus if it was earlier in the season or versus if it was in the off season? What does this do for the day-to-day routine of a basketball player right now?
Not a lot, because I imagine the only play Adelman has is to come in and the organization to come in, have a meeting, and explain to how nothing will change. And I mean, absolutely nothing will change, because if anything does change, right? Like, you are upsetting that apple cart and those and what you have going on in a way where now clearly what I'm saying is true. Like, you do not have a chance to be more successful. So nothing can change this deep into the season with that short of a runway to the playoffs. So we're going to keep your day-to-day, what we're doing, the verbiage of what we're doing. Like, maybe he changes a pick and roll coverage here or there. Like, maybe they run a set that's already in their playbook more often than they were running it before. Like, those type of things are at his discretion, but like, you're not going to be introducing too many new things to a team this late in a season about to go into a playoff run. So very little is going to change in terms of like your day-to-day or how you're affected. What will change is, like, if Jokic is a Malone guy and he was having some sort of off day or had something that he needed to talk about or had some constructive advice, like the sounding boards that were in place for certain players, if they were to have been Mike Malone, those are gone. And so, I don't know if he was to what degree he did that, but like you're going to be looking for different people than you could communicate with now if you're Jokic and that was your guy. And those things turn your world into a little bit of chaos. Like it looks good. The surface looks calm, but underneath the surface, there's a little bit of chaos going on, right? Because you look, we'll all sit in the meeting. Some of us may have big enough, cojones to ask questions if we have them. Most people are not going to have those in a meeting like that. Most of the me's of the world are going to, well, I might have had a question, but I was a little delusional as to like probably my value to an organization at times. But like most of the me's are just going to sit there and be like, take your marching orders. But as soon as the meeting ends and ownership and everyone leaves the room, it's going to turn into pure chaos. People be like, well, yo, what the fuck is going on? What is happening here? And the amount of those conversations that take place over the next couple of weeks, I mean, you can't even quantify.
I sent a tweet in the chat. I would like for both of you guys to look at this. I believe this was last night. Michael Malone said this. I want to gauge, after we watched it, I want to gauge Raja's response to this and gauge Howard's response to this, based on what his comments mean about where the locker room is, and if that sways your opinion one.
It was a brutally honest message, and the guys that are fully won't hear it. They'll say coach is tripping, and the guys that maybe do really care will, because they're not going to go back and watch their minutes, because nobody watches their minutes, nobody watches film, so we'll have to show them the film, and
I mean, and I think that's the biggest point, Howard, here is like the now part of it, and it's the same thing that we had with Memphis. Honestly, by and large, like I get it. I don't think a month of maybe losing, and that'll just a month of losing and crashing out in the playoffs will just give you more evidence to fire the person. You don't necessarily have to do it right now because it just messes up with chemistry, especially with Denver. Like they still have a chance to go to the conference finals in my eyes with this roster pre-move. Is there a difference in or a similarity in this Memphis Nuggets thing? I know you said the Nuggets part was worse in this. What do you see going forward? How do the Nuggets in the next 2 weeks? I'm going to ask you to make a prediction here. What do you think is going to happen?
So one version of this would go like this. Let's take it on faith that, as I've heard and as I think others are reporting, whether you want to call it losing the locker room, that's the cliche catch-all, or whether it's just, as I was saying earlier, that Malone tends to grade on players. I do think from everything I'd heard, there were issues there. So the upside here is, or if there's a best case scenario for the Nuggets after making this decision with days to go, it's that they respond better to David Adelman, that maybe things had gotten so bad between the players and the coach that they'll respond better to Adelman as now the interim head coach, that you've lifted some sort of cloud or tension that was maybe bogging them down. I think there's serious questions about whether or not this roster was good enough to make a finals run anyway. I think that's been clear. I don't think coaching or anything else that's happened in recent weeks or months is the issue. I think they simply don't have enough, right? Like Jamal Murray has been hurt. Jokic, this is the weird thing, right? Like they've got a losing record in their last, 15, 20 games, but Jokic missed a bunch of games. Jamal Murray's been banged up. Jamal Murray's out right now. They don't even know if he's going to be back for the playoffs. So it doesn't make sense, just as it didn't make sense with the Grizzlies to like put it on the coach at a time when you had guys out and that was accounting for the losing record. I think it has to be in both cases bigger than that. And it certainly is. Whether or not you actually can turn things around simply by changing the coach at this late stage, I don't know. I'm skeptical.
Me just looking at the situation, everything that happened last night is more of a symptom of just what's going bad with the Denver Nuggets as a whole, right? Which is, the GM and the coach going at it, tension building up, and just an overall bad decision in terms of timing. That's what I see.
Yeah.
As from where I sit. I think we're also getting into a weird zone where we don't know what the hell is going on at this point. And I think we'll have a better idea of that on Friday when you can catch me, Raja Bell, and Howard motherfucking Beck. I'll see you guys on Friday. I got to go get a haircut. My barber is really particular about these things. Okay, I'll see you guys. All the shits. Tim MacMahon is next. Bye.
Hey, let me tell you about one of my favorite bets that FanDuel has right now. They're called Player Performance Doubles. If you don't know about them, you got to check them out. They're these 2-leg parlays already made for you. FanDuel takes an NBA player prop, then combines it with a bet on that player's team to win. They have a bunch of them for every game. You just have to pick the one you like. Tonight, I like Jason Tatum plus 25 points, and I like the Celtics to get the dub. And whether you want to ride with my pick or make your own, FanDuel is giving all customers a profit boost exclusively for these bets on Tuesday. So just head to FanDuel.com/RingerNBA to get your profit boost. Make every moment more with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Must be 21 plus and present in select states or 18 plus and present in DC. Opt-in required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable profit boost tokens. Restrictions apply, including any token expiration and max wager amount. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit rg-help.com.
This is our next guest is somebody that we've been trying to have on for years. 4 years. And, you know, I'll just leave it at the bureaucracies of the business have kept him from coming on the podcast. But he has a book out called The Wonder Boy, Luka Doncic and the Curse of Greatness. Raja has to deal with that sometimes. It's the curse of greatness. But my guy, one of my favorite people in the business, Tim MacMahon is in the motherfucking building. Tim, what's going on, buddy? How you doing, man? Good to see you.
Partners. It is a pleasure to finally make it here. My guy Logan, Raja, one of the all-time great Mavericks, probably Dirk, Luka, Raja Bell, I would say, if I'm ranking.
In and about. I mean, it fluctuates.
Or you might be above Luka. Who knows?
Who knows?
It's a pleasure to be here, boys.
Thank you. Yo, it's so funny, like how people like revere Raja. He doesn't believe it though. I remember there was Kerr is in like my backyard. Steve Kerr is in my backyard, and I remember there was a couple months ago. Grant Hill was at the pregame presser. I think it was like to give out rings or something for Team USA, and Grant Hill tried to like ask Steve Kerr who his favorite sons are, and Kerr was like Steve Nash and Raja Bell. And this is a recurring thing that continues to happen. Raja's modest. He doesn't like to hear all this stuff. I texted him. He's like, I don't believe that they said this. But like, yo, Raja's kind of a god in these streets, and I'm trying to tell him this, and he doesn't believe me.
Listen, there's a it's interesting, right? Like like places like Dallas, let's say, you get in, you get out, you don't fuck anything up. The team's pretty good. You're just riding with it, and you kind of leave, at least you hope to leave a decent taste in people's mouth. The Suns were kind of the same way. Like, we were a really good team. I got shipped out of there. Not really my fault. It was kind of viewed as the and I have that relationship. Like, that was like probably the gift of my career bouncing around, except Philly, who were, if I had left right after that finals, oh my God, I'd be something in Philly, except I had the second year where I shit the bed. And they remember that too. You know what I mean? And so the same with Utah. If I had just left Utah and not gone back, I'd be fine. But I took my ass back and it ended poorly. So like, it's weird. You get out of places in just enough time and you could be pretty cool there.
No, but here's the deal though. And dead serious. Everybody loves the good dude who does all the dirty work and never bitches and moans about touches or shots. Like, Dorian Finney-Smith is a prime example of that. He was one of Luka's all-time favorite teammates. I mean, they gave him up in the Kyrie trade, but hey, they needed a co-star. Trust me on this. While Luka was emotionally devastated in the wake of being dumped by the Mavericks and just being blindsided, backstabbed, all those sort of things, reuniting with Dorian Finney-Smith, I guarantee you, made him smile, because he's the guy who's going to always take the tough defensive assignments. He's going to play his butt off, and he'll take 10 threes if they're there. He'll take none if they're not. Never gonna complain. Role players earn love, and then you were definitely one of those dudes.
Appreciate that. Shout out for the role, guys. Yes, sir.
Goddamn right. All right, man. Let's get to the shits. So I saw. First of all, I was really excited to read Tim MacMahon's book. Just in the beginning of the year when he was like, yo, man, trying to come on the pod. I got a book coming. I'm like, bet, let's fucking go. It's on Luka. Let's do it, right? And then the trade happens, right? And I had the pleasure of seeing Tim MacMahon in the week. I saw him like a couple weeks before the trade happened, and then a couple weeks after the trade happened. And the couple weeks after the trade happened, this dude was like he was dead inside, right? Because
I didn't have any gray in my beard before the trade.
Right. So I see him in the presser, right? Or in like the press room after the trade. This must have been like a week or so after, or maybe 2 weeks. It was 2 weeks because it was Mavericks Warriors. And he was dead inside, but I was like, yo, how you doing, bro? Like, I know this shit is at the fan. You good? He's like, bro, I had to write an extra chapter for my book. And I'm like, but I just saw you on TV, like, I don't know, for the last fucking 5 days straight. Like, how did you do this, right? So this is me asking you, Tim, now that we're all the dust is settled, can you take us through your personal journey first before we get to Luka's journey? What was your personal journey from the trade until like you've, I guess, found yourself above water, if you have already? Like, give me the 2 weeks after the trade. What's Tim MacMahon's life?
Right. And so the whole premise of the book is the pressure on a franchise when you draft a prodigy through the prism of Luka and the Mavericks. Kind of build it or they might leave, like we saw with LeBron in Cleveland, KD in Oklahoma City, on down the list. And the Mavericks had managed to successfully navigate that through all kinds of drama and dysfunction and twists and turns and, big time personnel mistakes. They succeeded in the mission. They had built a contender. They were fresh off of finals. And then they decided to dump him. So a little plot twist definitely needed to be addressed. And obviously, actually, I saw you right before the trade, Logan, because on the day of the trade, I had traveled from San Francisco. The Warriors had 3 games in 4 nights. It was like 3 Western Conference teams.
And you flew to Cleveland. You're like, I'm about to go to fly to Cleveland, right?
Yeah. And so, obviously, I had to connect, and it's a long travel day. And I'm going to get some good sleep tonight. Oh, no, I am not. And I'm not getting sleep for a while, right? And so, the ESPN part of my ESPN job was obviously awfully demanding during that time, covering the aftermath of this trade, reporting on all the Mavericks' reasoning, all that stuff, as well as the rest of the trade deadline. Like, I was in Oklahoma City on deadline day on KD watch. The Suns were in OKC. But I reached out to the publishing company and said, hey, we've got to get an extra chapter in. And, they told me there's a bunch of books already printed. For people who get those books, you can get the extra chapter via PDF. Check out my Twitter account. There's a link there, just with proof of purchase. But I had 12 days to get them the last chapter. Now, I also had, like, in terms of content, in terms of a story to tell, holy crap, was there a story to tell? Like, I couldn't complain about the content. I couldn't complain about the business opportunity in terms of the publicity this trade's generating, in terms of the Lakers fans now being a target audience. But it was a hustle, and it was due February 14th. That was the day the All-Star break started. I'm trying to stay married for the rest of my life, so I take wifey on an All-Star weekend getaway every year. Cash in those.
Goddamn right.
Some of those Marriott points. We had a 6 a.m. flight to Miami, connecting to St. Martin. And
speaking Raja's language,
right now. Like 4 games in the 6 nights before the deadline, including where they're like booting people out for wearing Fire Nico stuff. And I mean, it's insanity. They had a game the night before, cover that game, and pull an all-nighter. I finished the final chapter at 4 a.m. Boom, hit send, grab my bag, grab my wife, off to the airport we go, went through the edits on the flights, got to St. Martin, and I think I might have pulled a triple-double because I think I might have had double-figure beers all 3 nights that we were there. So it was one of those type weekends.
Yeah, Raja, did you just have one of those weekends in the Cayman Islands?
I did. I was on triple-double watch too, Tim, but I flamed out. I mean, we were there. We took the kids. It's our last spring break all together, so we took them down, and the day drinking had taken its toll after day 3. So I think I got the 10th one down on day 3, but after that I was awash.
Can't do it like we used to.
No, man. No. I looked. I mean, I don't know where to start with this, the whole Luka thing. Obviously, I mean, Tim, I don't know if you know, but like Nico's an old school NBA. Like he's like a made man in terms of for some of us that had played in that era. So like I clearly have a relationship with him, and have tried to defend him to whatever degree I can. Like I know that's kind of indefensible when it comes right down to it. But I did make a comment, and I'm curious. Maybe you've covered this, and I haven't seen it, but like, you know, I made a comment when it first happened. That if anyone were to know, you know, the deep, dark secrets, if Luka were to have any, that would give you pause moving forward, it would be the team that had been with him forever. I still don't know that you can have enough to warrant the move, but I mean, I'm just fascinated. I haven't asked Mike Finn or Nico, like, and there's a part of me that just believes there has to be something else there, like that. Is it just about his weight and conditioning and wanting to have a beer or two after games? Like, I can't wrap my head around that.
Well, and, you know, his post-game routine and my post-game routine are way too similar. We'll just say that.
Fair. But like, Tim, you know this, not to cut you off. It wasn't too long ago that was all of our post-game routines.
Right. And like, you know, when Patrick Dumont, the new owner, comes out a week after the trade, and he's talking about, you know, the level of work ethic from these stars. And he cites Larry Bird. Hey, Larry Bird was an awesome player. Larry Bird loved drinking beer, right? And he mentions Shaq. Like, Shaq is exhibit A of some dudes are so talented, they can play their way into shape basically every single season.
Yo, man, Jimmy Butler has a Michelob Ultra after every game. I know. I see it. He does it in plain view of everyone in the post-game locker room. This is not, you know what I mean? This is not a thing. You
know, hey, look. The conditioning concerns, these aren't new with Luka. I mean, they literally go way back to the pre-draft process. That was the intel then. Like, you know, hey, you know, likes to have a good time. You know, the condition is going to be a concern. That's part of the reason the Mavericks were able to get him at 3 after moving up from 5. You know, 3 teams passed on the guy. It's been a concern throughout his career. And there was definitely a frustration that, man, still, like, they felt like, God, when they shut him down with the right wrist injury, which he had a wrist injury, but it didn't need 11 days. It was, you know, get in shape, similar to the ankle from J. Kidd and Nico's first year. It's like, God, can't believe we're doing this shit again. You know, that sort of a thing. And the calf stuff. It was 4 calf strains in 28 months. And then you worry about what's next. And Nico clearly is like, Nico's bet is that Luka's body is going to break down in his prime. Now, I get it. And the other thing is there was a big time fraying of the relationship, especially between Luka and Nico. And it goes back to firing Casey Smith, who, you know, how, you know, well respected Casey Smith is, not just in the industry, but how critical he was to the fabric of the organization. In Dallas, you know, hey, there's a reason Dirk Nowitzki hasn't been involved with the franchise since Casey was fired. Casey was also a huge part of the cultural transition that Luka made, massive cultural transition. He's a teenager from Europe thrown into the NBA, and Casey was with him every step of the way. You know, same with the strength coach, the massage therapist, who ended up getting fired after the finals. And so Nico replaced people who had become Luka's friends and his trusted advisors and his inner circle with people known around the organization as Nico guys. And so that led to definitely some friction, some tension, and basically the disintegration of their relationship. There's the conditioning concerns. There was also 5 first-team All-NBA selections by the age of 25. There was also a 34-10-9 season last year and a run to the NBA Finals. But Nico was convinced that a supermax would be a terrible investment with Luka. And he convinced Patrick Dumont, who frankly doesn't know anything about basketball, he convinced Patrick Dumont this would be a terrible investment. Dumont and Nico did not seek the input of Mark Cuban whatsoever. You know, Cuban would have done everything he could to stop this from happening. He was basically informed when the deal was done. And I'll be honest with you, I just think that the fear of the supermax is really flawed logic. Because to me, if you want to trade this guy, you've got to get him locked up to a supermax. you don't want to trade a guy like this in secret. You don't want to deflate his value and let Pelinka say, well, gee whiz, I don't know if will he be happy with the Lakers? Does he like sunshine? Does he like playing for the most glamorous team ever? I can't give you this other pick and this swap and Dalton.
Does he like fresh California air? Like,
yeah. So, but by keeping it secret, you deflate the value. If you supermax him, you got to live with him for another year and a half. Oh, well, maybe you go back to a finals or two, maybe not. Even if he suffers a major injury, look what the Nets got for Kevin Durant into his 30s after an Achilles, after some other significant injuries. If you put Luka on the block, locked up for at least 4 years, and just announced the league, we're trading this guy before training camp, has there ever been a bidding war like you would have in that situation?
It would have been like if LeBron asked for a trade in his prime. It would have been ridiculous.
Yeah, so I really, I think the desire to trade this guy is unprecedented. I mean, the only time we've seen anything close to this sort of a talent get traded at this point in their career was when the player basically said, hey, I'm leaving. You might as well get something for me now. That's not the case here. He was planning to play in Dallas for the long haul. And then just that I don't understand the rush to do it right now. But Nico decided he wanted to be done with Luka, and he wanted to get AD, who you talk about Nico's relationships throughout the league, aside from Kobe, probably tighter with AD than any other player that he's dealt with in the course of his, 2-decade career as a Nike executive.
You bring up Kobe, and you write about this a lot in the book, which is his relationship with Kobe, right? But like, how much does that educate, for better or worse, like how he sees the game and how he team builds, right? Because I mean, he's seen firsthand how great Kobe's work ethic is, and I'm sure he wants that in every single player that he puts into the building. But also, like, that's still Luka Doncic. So, like, what does Nico need to figure out in all of this before time runs out?
Well, the decision is made. So, and his decision was this guy does not fit the culture that he wanted as the leader as the face of a franchise, as the leader of the team. Although, Kyrie was the leader in the locker room, to be frank, but Luka didn't fit the culture that Nico envisions. And it's not just work ethic, but it's discipline. It's diet. It's the commitment to conditioning. And look, man, like Dirk Nowitzki epitomized that. And if you'd asked if they would have sought Dirk's input on this, Dirk would have been like, what in the fuck are you doing? Like, no, don't trade that guy. I mean, Dirk is just flabbergasted that this happened. Dirk never had a shred of a doubt that Luka was a worthy successor to him in terms of, here's the torch, run with it. And like Nico definitely uses Kobe as the standard, right? And Kobe, obviously, like you talk about it, his work ethic's legendary. His approach is legendary. I will say this, though. Kobe essentially blessed Luka as, hey, this dude, kind of welcoming into the elite tier. Like he basically acknowledged Luka as a peer when, the last time that Kobe went to a Lakers game, with Gigi right there, they went to see Gigi's favorite player, Luka Doncic, and that's when Kobe's sitting courtside and Luka's about to inbound the ball and Kobe starts talking trash to him in Slovenia. And they had that moment where, there's the mural in LA, where they're dapping up after the game. And so Kobe recognized this guy as like, dude, this is one of those types of talents. LeBron did that very early in Luka's career. The title of chapter 7 of my book is Bad Motherfucker, because that's what LeBron called him. For the ESPN cameras caught it after a matchup very early in Luka's second season. So, I mean, the condition concerns, all that stuff is absolutely legitimate. But when you have these sort of legends acknowledging very early on that this guy is one of us, I just think the talent and the production outweighs those concerns. Because look, man, we're not talking about potential. He's proven it. He's taken a team to the finals. He took a very different, completely different supporting cast to the conference finals a couple of years ago. Has he gotten to the top of the mountain in the NBA? No. But it's a really short list of guys who did that in their early 20s as the best player on a team, an extremely
And that
short
conference
list.
finals team in 22 wasn't like the greatest bunch. Like it had Jalen Brunson on there, right? But they went and beat the 60-win Suns in 7 games, largely because of Luka and Jalen. But like he had the ability to, and similar to LeBron, to just uplift the rest of the team that may not be as good without him, right? Like he's able to do that, and that's a rare thing for a player to be able to do.
And he's also got one of the most ruthlessly competitive streaks that I've ever seen, and that is Kobe-esque, right? I mean, you talk about that Sun series. Remember, they're down 0-2, right? And they're down 3-2, and that's when Luka, walks through the tunnel in Phoenix, talking about everybody act tough when they up. And then it's Game 7 in Phoenix.
Raja loves that.
The soul out of the entire Suns franchise, out of the entire city of Phoenix. This dude outscored the Phoenix Suns by himself on the road in a Game 7 first half, right? And like just completely dominated and was sneering. And this was a team that had the best record in the league that year. Last year in Minnesota, Game 5 elimination on the road, like this guy thrives in those kind of situations. He thrives as the enemy, and he just loves, like he'll look for somebody in the stands. Don't be the main character as the fan who's
Wait, wasn't there a time, I do remember a time, no, Tim, where he kind of got at you? It might have been during the 22 playoffs. I remember he saw at you, and he got at you about something that you said, or like, we're going to kick their ass, or something. Like you picked against them in the 22 playoffs?
There have been times when there's been a few occasions when we've kind of gone back and forth in press conference settings when he didn't like reporting by me. By the way, all reporting that I continue to stand by and was completely factual, accurate, and in the proper context. That's neither here nor there. But what you're talking about, this is actually a good story, and it's in the book. So again, the Suns were a 64-win team, had the best record in the league, coming off a finals appearance. Devin Booker's balling, Chris Paul's still Chris Paul. In fact, that was a hell of a team. And so the ESPN predictions, where I think there's 21 ESPN reporters, analysts, whatever. They predict each series. There were 21 Suns logos and a whole bunch of white space on the Mavs side, 21-0. And so, that becomes a thing on social media. It became a thing in the Mavs group chat, like the player group chat, right? And so it's shoot around at Game 1, before Game 1 in Phoenix. And, Luka's doing his thing where he's sitting on the sideline, flinging up shots from the courtside seats, just messing around like he always does. And I'm walking to J-Kid's going to speak like mid-court. So, I'm walking by, pause. Luka gets a shot up. I take a couple steps and he goes, "Hey." And Luka, this was the first time, I'm kid you not, this was the end of his 4th year. This was the first time he ever initiated small talk with me. He's not a guy who loves interacting with the media. So I'm like, "What's up?" He said, "I heard you pick the Suns." I said, "Oh, okay. Now I see why he wants to talk." And I'm like, I had picked Suns in 7. So I said, "Yeah, I'm sorry if it offends you that I think it's going to be a competitive series with the team that had the best record in the league this year." He goes, "Oh no, I'm not offended." And then we had a little comment. He just said, "I thought you were with us." Yeah, and I said, no. Mickey Mouse signs my checks. Mark Cuban does not. And I kind of a brief explanation of there's a difference between covering a team and being part of the team. Like I work for ESPN. I don't work for the Dallas Mavericks. He said, okay. And then he goes, "We'll see." And it was just kind of dismissed me, right? That was interesting. And then Game 7, I mean, they just absolutely blew out the Suns on their home floor, like really humiliated Phoenix. it was a hell of a series win by the Mavericks. Like I said, Luka was just absolutely dominant in that game. So he comes into his press conference, and I'm sitting in, kind of off to the side of the room. He just looks at me, points, goes, "Told you." And I said, "I changed my prediction at halftime."
Yeah, that's great. That's great. I mean, look, I mean, I've played with played against some of the European players that come from that Slavic region. Those dudes are cut different. Like when you say, Kobe stamped him, I found that interesting when you were saying Kobe stamped him and then LeBron, like real always recognizes real. It doesn't take long for you to see that in someone, especially when you have those similar traits, right? And Luka clearly has all of that. And I not to go back, but it just, Logan, you said something, and we had talked about it, months ago about Nico and being in that front row seat to watching the Kobe maniacal work ethic and squeezing every ounce of talent out of that. Like, that's a lot of times an unrealistic expectation. Like we talk about Kobe, like people talk about the Mamba mentality. People don't live that like Kobe lived that. Like that is a very, very, very high bar to set. Now it's something to aspire and to try to achieve, but like he was on a different level. So like holding others to that standard can be dangerous because, to your point, Tim, like there are a lot of dudes in this league. I played with them. The Boris Diaws of the world, that if you said, hey, on a scale of 1 to 10, how hard does he work? You might say 2. Like you might, but like he's so talented that it doesn't really matter. And this just takes me to an overall point, and we're all guilty of it to some degree. Like, and it's a hard thing, especially when you're in that business setting and you're running billion-dollar, multi-million-dollar companies, is like taking the personal out of it.
Yeah.
Because from all that you said about the getting rid of Casey and moving the staff around and bringing your people in, it sounds like at least somewhere deep down it became personal, and that's you can't do that.
I think that's a fair and accurate characterization. And like again, the conditioning stuff, they're legitimate concerns. The calf strains forward to the same calf in 28 months. I understand those concerns, the weight fluctuation, all that. The work ethic thing is interesting. Does he work like you want in terms of like a commitment to conditioning? No. But you don't develop the kind of skill he has by being lazy. You know what I mean? Like there aren't 6'8", 250-pound dudes with that kind of handle, with that kind of touch, with the bag that he has, and you don't just develop that by chilling on the couch all summer long. And so the thing with Luka is you have to make everything competitive. You got to find a way to make his conditioning a competitive thing where he's competing against somebody else, where there's a winner and there's a loser. It's like he'll play a lot in the stay ready games, right? With guys who are coming back off of injuries or who are low minutes guys. Those games, Raja, they've got like staffers in those games because he'd rather get out there and hoop and compete than jump on the treadmill. So that like his in-season condition will be the stay ready games because everything has to be competitive. Every drill, if you want him engaged in practice, has to be competitive. And so it even like his commitment to the national team, the Slovenian national team, which I wrote about that because I do think it really illustrates that this guy does have a strong natural sense of loyalty. But, there's concerns of, hey, wear and tear on the body. Like, going into last season, he played in the World Cup, went all the way through, led the league in minutes, regular season, playoffs combined, and then banged up as he was, jumped right into an Olympic qualifying tournament. So there's concern about wear and tear. But then there's also like, well, at least he's running up and down when he's playing for the Slovenian national team. So, but again, the guy loves hoops, loves competing. It's like he does have that kind of Jordan-esque, Kobe-esque competitive drive, like, the whole thing with the security guard flipping the quarter, shrug, the Jordan shrug. Like, Luka will compete his ass off in ping pong or in spike ball, or, like the bubble was great for Luka because all it was hooping, hanging out, and playing other games. He has that competitive drive. It just doesn't, he doesn't prepare the way that you would want in terms of the mundane, boring stuff. If he had like Dirk's approach, I mean, my goodness. But again, doing it the other thing is, honestly, success came so quickly and so easily to him. This dude was an MVP candidate as a 20-year-old in his second season in the NBA. So it's kind of hard to say, hey, dude, like, you got to take a different approach. What do you mean I got to take a different approach? Like, dude, I'm a superstar who can't even buy a beer yet in America. He found his way to grab a few beers that year. But
yeah, I don't think he had a problem finding the case, but we get it.
How where do we go from here? We've mentioned Cuban, we mentioned Dirk, and you lay it out in your book. They're not like really that much of a figureheads in the Mavericks organization that much.
I would say they've got no juice,
which is wild to even say. But
Cuban
like
has
me and
no
Raja
more
talk
say
about
than any other rich dude who has a courtside season ticket.
Dude, that's
wild.
so sad.
But like me and Rod talk about this all the time. Like, it's not just like the players that are on the court that make the team go. It's the alumni base. It's the figureheads, the people that have institutional knowledge of the organization. So like, if you don't have a Mark Cuban that you're listening to, you don't have the face of your entire franchise in Dirk Nowitzki that you're talking to. Like, are the Mavericks just in a rudderless place going forward? Like, what are they? Who are they listening to? Because it just feels like this was a land grab for the new ownership, and everything else you figure it out. It's fine. I don't really care. Nico has like an outsized amount of power. It feels like in there, for better or worse. What happens over the next few months? Because like they just seem like a rudderless organization where they're not doing the things that a respected professional organization do anymore. And which is sad because the Mavs are one of those teams where you had an institution.
Well, and to use Patrick Dumont's own words, in Nico we trust. He has completely given absolute and total control of basketball operations to Nico Harrison, who, look, when he came in as a general manager, when you're the general manager under Mark Cuban, you're not really the general manager. Like, everybody understands, it's always going to be Cuban running the show, right? Until it wasn't. Until Cuban sold the franchise. And Cuban insists that there was some sort of gentleman's agreement between him and the Adelson and Dumont families, and that he was going to keep basketball control, but it wasn't written. And honestly, I don't know if that's true. I don't know if Cuban's completely full of crap.
Did he convince himself that he did have basketball operations? Like, I just, where's the disconnect there?
Well, it wasn't in writing, so there was no it wasn't official. And if he still had basketball control, it didn't last much longer than the ink dried. I mean, it was like, and so last year the deadline was Nico Harrison's deadline, and like those moves were questioned at the time, but getting Daniel Gafford, giving up your 2028 swap to OKC to facilitate it, that ended up being a key move. Getting PJ Washington, giving up your 2027 first rounder to Charlotte to do it, that ended up being a great move. He put together this athletic supporting cast that really fit well around Luka. You surrounded him with athletes and lob threats and defenders, where this was the team that was the number one defense in the league down the stretch of the season. That continued going into the playoffs, and everything fit. And then you change your mind. But the fact that he was able to convince Dumont to be done with Luka was because Dumont wasn't seeking other opinions. And they cut Cuban completely out of the loop. Also cut Cuban completely out of the loop in terms of like the managing of the relationships between Luka and Luka's people and the Mavericks front office, the Mavericks revamped, health and performance staff. Cuban basically said, hey, do you want me to handle that? Do you want me to kind of be the go-between? They said, no, we don't want that. And I'll be honest with you. When I found out that Cuban was done as far as control of basketball operations, I thought that was a good thing for the Mavericks, because the guy had a lot of missteps. The KP trade blew up in the Mavs' face. I do put the bungling of the Jalen Brunson situation from literally the signing of his rookie deal that allowed him to be unrestricted at the end of it, to not giving him an extension, to not trying to outbid the Knicks. I put that all on Cuban. I never imagined that the Mavericks would have been better off with Cuban being in control until the day Luka was traded. And then hours later, you've got Nico in Cleveland, sitting in that. It wasn't even a press conference. It was like the first half of J Kidd's regular coach pregame availability, and explaining that they're built to win now and in the future, and then clarifying by the future, he means the next 3 to 4 years. Then you start to do the math. You're like, hold on. You're out 27, 28, 29, and 30 as far as control of your own first round capital. So you're saying this window you've built expires just as the credit card bills do? Like, dude, it's illogical.
Yeah, no, it's wild. I do want to ask a couple questions just about. Let's go to Los Angeles. I want to ask about Luka in Los Angeles. What have you thought of his first 2 months there? Just as a guy that has seen him play for the start of his career, what is it like to kind of see him from afar now? And how does that educate how you think he's going to go in the short term in LA right now?
Well, I've been actually surprised by how much immediate success the Lakers have had without Luka playing at like a full-blown Luka level. Like, we've seen glimpses of that, but dude, again, this guy averaged damn near a 34-point triple-double last year. And, he was coming off of the longest injury absence of his career, the emotional devastation of being dumped and, frankly, kind of publicly shamed. And then, everything that goes along with a midseason trade, new team, new city, new everything. And so the first, 3-4 weeks of Luka in a Lakers uniform was kind of training camp mode for him, trying to get his legs under him, trying to get his life in order, getting used to, all the new pieces around him. But the fit with LeBron, that was never a concern. I mean, you're talking about two of the smartest players in the league today and in a while. And honestly, I think LeBron benefits greatly from having Luka there, just like Kyrie did last year. Where, look, man, Luka's going to have the ball in his hands. Like, if you run, you're going to get a lot of easy buckets. You're going to get your touches, but Luka's going to control things. And suddenly, these Hall of Famers got fresh legs in the fourth quarter. And I think you've seen LeBron benefit from that. You saw Kyrie as one of the best closers in the league last year. I honestly didn't anticipate that Austin Reeves would continue ascending, playing next to Luka and LeBron, but that's fit. That's clicked. I still think, and Luka, you see flashes, you see glimpses. I mean, the other day, especially the first half in OKC, holy moly. You see the joy coming back in him. I think he's emotionally gotten over the trade. And look, it helps that JJ Redick's a buddy of his. I think that relationship's been good. LeBron's a guy I looked up to. I mentioned Finney Smith is one of his favorite teammates. They didn't ship him to Siberia either. Like, there are perks to living in LA as a Los Angeles Laker. I still think they're probably a transaction cycle or two away from being a real championship threat. Maybe they'll prove me wrong, but I do think they've got to get that rim running, rim protecting big. I also think those type of guys will be lining up to try to play for the Lakers next to Luka Doncic.
Yeah, I agree with that. Of all the things you said, the Austin Reeves thing has been fascinating to me, just because while I totally could see LeBron and Luka working together, Austin's one of those guys who he actually likes to have the ball in his hands a bit. Like, he can play off of it, but he does so much good stuff with it that I thought someone would have to give in that equation. And I just figured it would be Austin, and he's played fantastic. I too agree with you. I think that, like, I give them a puncher's chance, especially in the playoffs, as Luka continues to kind of get over it. When you get traded, that lingers, dude. That's like that's a breakup. Like, it's like you've dated someone for 5 years and then you run into somebody 2 days later and you expect to have a healthy relationship and ride off into the sunset, that's hard to do. There's lingering stuff. But as he continues to get over that, I see them being, real formidable in the West. But I do think that they are a piece away. I think they especially with we've talked about defensively sometimes, like you need that protection when you're built the way they're built, right? You got to have that guy, and it also loosens everything up on offense. So I just would agree with all of that.
Yeah, and as far as the breakup goes, like especially in a case like this where like Luka was completely blindsided, like that was an intentional strategy by Nico Harrison.
Yeah, it was kind of dirty. It was look, like I've said this, Nico's my guy, but like if I'm keeping it a bean, like that's
he did it. The way I've put it is after 6 years of that franchise kissing Luka's butt, and I would say, rightfully so, given his status as one of those top tier superstars, they stabbed him in the back. I mean, that is exact. And like, there was no question about Luka's, like there was friction with him and Nico, and there's some fraying relationships. And honestly, J Kidd was frustrated with all the same conditioning issues and all that too. But there was no question that Luka was committed to being in Dallas long term. None. The guy was absolutely going to sign the richest contract in NBA history this summer. He was closing on what was going to be his American forever home. He got his house broken into, when there was all these pro athletes getting their houses broken into. Actually, it was right after Christmas, and he was getting treatment at the practice facility at the time. They got him at his house. And so he was moving into this palace with like this unbelievable security system, was closing on the house. The man lost his earnest money. I mean, that's how far. And the Mavericks knew he was closing on the house. So like, don't tell me you weren't sure if he was re-signing this summer.
Oh.
He absolutely. They weren't scared that Luka would, about whether or not he would resign. Like they weren't scared. Oh, he might not. They were scared of giving him the contract.
Nuts. Wild. I do want to ask you a question just about Luka's relationships with front offices. And he has a history of kind of butting heads, right? Like not before Nico Harrison, it was Donnie Nelson. And I'm curious, like, what do the Lakers brass need to watch out for? Because this is Luka's team, right? Like this is a partnership long term between him and the Lakers. What do the Lakers front office need? Is there any red flags that they need to worry about? Not just in terms of personality. We've seen this in the past with him.
Mm-hmm.
How do you think that they need to approach the relationship with Luka going forward in this partnership in the next few years?
Well, Luka butted heads with Bob Voulgaris, who was the so-called shadow GM, not with Donnie.
Okay.
But that was who at the time had Cuban's ear. Obviously butted heads with Nico, really butted heads with Rick Carlisle. I do put, frankly, the majority of the fault there on Rick, who, I write about a team meeting literally a week into Luka's career where Rick permanently cracked the foundation of their relationship. Is there some maintenance involved with Luka? Sure. Do I think it's like extraordinarily high compared to a lot of other superstars around the league? No, I don't. Honestly, I had somebody, one of Luka's supporters here, ask me rhetorically, who do you think Miami would have rather dealt with for the first half of the season, Luka Doncic or Jimmy Butler? I mean, seriously, like, okay, there's a little bit of maintenance involved. Now, I was in LA recently, and it's post game, and waiting to go to the press conference room, and where you stop in the hallway, right by the hallway to the locker room, right? And there's this guy with his arm around Luka walking to the locker room, and kind of wearing a tight little jacket with the sleeves rolled up. It was Rob Pelinka. Oh, Rob had one of those fancy jackets on with the arm around.
One of them leather jackets that don't fit quite right, but it's $2,000.
It wasn't the Fonzie jacket that he wore to the press conference, but it was another one. But the point, and I saw that, and I'm like, wow, what a contrast that is. Rob walking the locker room, arm around him, whispering sweet nothings in his ear, to frankly zero communication this year between Luka and Nico. So Pelinka, Jeannie Buss, they understand, hey, it's got to be a priority, like it was for Mark Cuban for 5.5 years, 6 years. It's got to be a priority to make sure that Luka is as comfortable as possible. And that's not unique to Luka. Hey, welcome in his body team. How can we help you? How can we work with you? Again, I think the fact that Luka, they were very briefly teammates, Luka and JJ Redick, but they really clicked. They really bonded. The fact that Luka went on JJ's podcast twice tells you how much he really likes and respects the guy, because hell, I couldn't get Luka to say hi to me unless I picked against him in a playoff series. But they, in all seriousness, no, they've got a relationship there, and they've embraced the people around Luka who are important to him. And I honestly, I think that the Lakers are going about it in exactly the right way. I think that it really is a good situation for him. I think Luke is going to have a long, successful, mostly happy tenure with the Lakers. Maybe I'll be proven wrong, but Luka by no means is perfect. He can be petulant. His flaws are obvious, right? But I would say the relationships that went south with him in Dallas, I wouldn't put the fault primarily on him in any of those situations.
It's you said that the managing of a Luka is not unique to Luka, and making sure that someone's feeling wanted and respected in the way that organizations. I would argue that's not unique to the NBA. That's not unique to sports in general. That's life, dude. When you have brilliance in your company, like you make sure that shit's taken care of. You make sure, provided it's not toxic and it can still produce for you. That's your job when you're a manager in some capacity, right? Like that's what you're supposed to do. I do think this is interesting, Logan, because you said this is a Luka's team, and I don't think it is. Like right now, like as long as LeBron James, it's his in the future.
Sure.
And this is where it's interesting for me. Like I mean, it's just a thought, right? Like you could say what you want, but when LeBron James is on a roster, it's his team. I've borne witness to that. I've been sitting there when LeBron James enters a room, and anyone in that room other than LeBron thinks they're going to call a shot or set tone or dictate culture. Doesn't happen, right? So as long as he's there, it's his team, and their ability to kind of navigate and just kind of like phase out and phase in and blend their two careers, I think is will be a huge part of how successful that winds up being. Because in LeBron's absence, Luka in LA, I agree 1000%. Great career. We're playing, incredible talent, one of the best franchises ever. But this little window of time where and it's interesting because when things are good, right? And then their ability, Luka and LeBron, to kind of, share, and then the organization's ability to kind of not show their hand in terms of favoritism in a way that causes any kind of friction is going to be really important in this window.
Well, and who knows how long the window might last, because LeBron, I know how old he is. He's still playing at an all-NBA level. He's still a lot of times maybe the best athlete on the floor. But I don't think you necessarily want Luka to be the guy who dictates culture, right? Kyrie was the leader last year. Brunson was that even keel. It was Luka's team, and it was Luka's team with Kyrie. But Brunson, when they went to the conference finals, he was that even keel complement to Luka, who Luka he operates in emotional extremes. It's joy, it's wrath, it's anger, it's agony, it's screaming at the referees, it's celebrate. There's not.
It's volatile.
Right? You need that even keel complement, and like the fact that LeBron is going to be the face of things in terms of who the media goes to and like kind of the team spokesman. Trust me, Luka is more than happy with that. And then LeBron understands the benefits of having Luka, and LeBron understands the importance clearly of empowering Luka. And so I don't see there being, and just like Kyrie, Luka and Kyrie, they kind of had to figure things out for that first year. And it was more so too much mutual respect, kind of a your turn, my turn thing. Also, the supporting cast around them sucked. Once they addressed that, suddenly they won a lot more games. But for LeBron, he is immediately empowering Luka. It's not like, this is my offense, I'll give you a little bit. No, it's like, hey, here's the keys. I'm playing off of you. And then again, he's fresh for the fourth quarters. And so I see LeBron's presence and just, again, the mutual respect they have for each other. Like Luka had so much respect for LeBron. The first time Luka played LeBron, he's hanging out outside the home locker room at the Staples Center so he can ask for his autographed jersey, like like a little kid. Sometime that he's done that. So again, I think I think it has been to this point and will continue to be a healthy dynamic. And like Luka's been through, like the experience Luka went through with KP, where it was kind of a tug of war, who's the man, and then KP, the experience KP had there. I think Luka learned from that. And I think KP learned from that. I think Porzingis, the success Porzingis has had with the Celtics, is kind of a complimentary star. I think that was paved by the disappointment that he had in Dallas. And, again, Luka now, he's 26 years old. He's been through some stuff in the NBA. I don't see him getting, and I don't see him or LeBron letting ego get in the way of what can be and should be an extremely successful partnership. And they're empowering Austin Reeves at the same time. And by the way, Austin Reeves, if you put your third best defensive player on him, probably going to be a mismatch. And we're seeing that.
No doubt. I got one more question about that, because I agree with you. I think, but you might not have a great answer, and it may neither be here or there. Made the argument that Luka, someone who, we talked about some of the flaws in terms of conditioning, and so on and so forth, with someone like LeBron, at like this point in his career, is he the type of person that because LeBron's maniacal too, in terms of taking care of the body, the detail with diet, rest, preparedness, like all of those things are great habits. And I'm trying to think to Luka's first few years in the league. I mean, he had Dirk, but Dirk was broken down. Yeah, like he was.
But Dirk absolutely could have provided him the roadmap and was more than happy to. And look, Kyrie's routine and his approach is extraordinarily disciplined. And that's Kyrie's learned over the course of his career. He's just as maniacal about taking care of his body. So my point is this: it ain't like Luka hasn't had roadmaps, or that he hasn't had people whose brains he could pick on the subject. Now, what he's never had is blatant disrespect, is being slapped in the face for the world to see. So if this slap in the face from the Mavericks organization doesn't get Luka to lock into the mundane stuff, this stuff you don't see, it's behind the scenes, it's diet, it's conditioning, all those sort of things, then nothing ever will. And like watching LeBron, taking after him, sure, that can help, but it's a commitment thing. It's making it a priority. And maybe he does, and maybe he doesn't. Honestly, I think either way, the guy's it's like, is he going to have an all-time great career, or is he going to have an all-time greatest kind of career? That's really what we're talking about here.
We're talking to you on the eve of Luka's return to Dallas. What do you expect the reaction to be for him?
Well, it'll be a sellout crowd, which we haven't seen much of since his trade was made. And it's going to be surreal. It's going to be, everybody, there's going to be just a ton of Luka jerseys, which there still are. But especially in this case, Mavericks jerseys, Slovenia jerseys, Lakers jerseys. Almost everyone in the stands is going to be wanting to see Luka score 50, 60, 70 points. It's going to be a celebration of 6.5 years of absolute spectacular brilliance. And then it's going to be the mourning that it wasn't a hell of a lot more than that. It's going to be surreal. And honestly, I don't know. I've seen how Luka responds to being the enemy in a road arena. I'm not sure how he's going to respond to kind of the emotional tugging at his heart in this situation. Again, I don't think the Mavericks are going to allow him to have a 50, 60, 70 point performance. I do think they will double team the hell out of him and basically make him give the ball up as much as possible. But I don't know. I really thought the first time they saw each other, which was in LA, on February 25th, I thought we were going to see kind of that full-blown wrath from Luka. And we got a glimpse of it in the first quarter, but he was still like really working through the emotions at that time. And at the end, after the game, he said, "Hey, I'm just glad this is over." And you could kind of see like there was still kind of a cloud hovering over him emotionally. I think he has found his joy with the Lakers, but again, it's hard for me to predict how he's going to respond to such a unique and surreal scene that I'm anticipating we'll see at the AC.
Yeah. That's going to be really tough. I mean, I don't like clearly not Luka or in any sense or whatever, but like when I got traded from the Suns, and that was the place that I felt like was kind of my career place. The Suns came to us the first time, and that was like angry, fuck you, like you got me when I was still raw with emotion, right? Kind of like what happened to Luka. And then we went to Phoenix a couple months later, a month or so later, and that one hurt. Yeah. Like that's when the emotion, like, because the support, like you see all the people that that's your life. You're walking into those arenas, you're saying hi to the same people every day. You got your routine with them. You got all the fans that you basically see every home game. You got your sections and stuff, and seeing all of those people, that opens up a little bit of wound. That's a tough night. Like he could still, I'm sure he'll be great, but it's tough.
Well, and there's the tribute video, which is going to be like, look, let's be honest, that's going to be really awkward. Like this franchise is honoring a dude who, by his mid-20s was an absolute legend, but they dumped him. But yeah, just
what if my dude just doesn't do the fucking tribute video? What if Nico?
that would be them changing their mind. I have been told a tribute videos.
All right, fair.
Yes. So I know this. A tribute video has been made.
Okay.
Now, if they change it, maybe there's a last minute change of mind. But boy,
he can't do that. He wouldn't get out of the arena, dude. He can't do that.
Well, I tell you, that would set an NBA record for pettiness.
Yeah. And that's saying something. Yes, that's saying a lot.
It is a league of pettiness. That would take the cake.
For Nico, though, last question for you. For the Mavericks' point of view, like what they're going to the summer. Kyrie's injured. He's probably going to be out for a year. AD is theoretically going to be healthy. You don't never know with AD, but like, what are their summer plans? What are they going to do? They're going to go after KD. What do the Mavericks do over the summer that's going to at least make them a formidable roster in time for Kyrie to come back whenever he does? Like, what's next?
Well, and the question that's asked a lot is Nico's job in jeopardy? Like people around the league ask me that. Obviously, that's the fire Nico chants from the fans are frequent and all over the DFW area. All I can say about that is Patrick Dumont has voiced strong public support. So again, like you have to allow leeway for people to change their minds, but certainly it seems that Nico Harrison will continue to be making the decisions. And then like, look, I don't know. Like we don't know how much time Kyrie's going to miss next season, but he's not going to be back to start. We know that. Obviously you've got to get some more creation, some more ball handling in. Can that be like a short-term kind of stopgap type thing? Like, a name that has popped to my mind would be like a Dennis Schroeder. I would highly recommend something along those lines. But then, hey, one thing we've seen from Nico throughout the course of his time in Dallas is that the man's not afraid to take big swings. Like his tendency is to take big, big swings. I have been told that the Mavericks will not be aggressive suitors in the Kevin Durant trade market. I don't know that I necessarily believe that. I'm not reporting it. I've just been told that. There's a difference. So I guess my short-term answer is we'll see. It's going to be interesting.
For sure. Tim MacMahon, catch him on ESPN, read his book, The Wonder Boy, Luka Doncic and the Curse of Greatness. This was a treat, man. I told you, we've been trying to have you on for years. Every time I see you in press areas, I'm like, yo, when you coming on? He's like, I don't know. When you coming on? I don't know. Then he came in the top of the year. I saw him. He's like, yo, I come on the pod. I was like, let's fucking do it. So, Tim MacMahon, one of the best in the business, man. Thanks so much for coming on, buddy.
I feel like I'm a real one now. Like
You're fucking real.
I've been stamped.
Goddamn
That's
right. Goddamn right.
Welcome, Tim.
Welcome, baby. I appreciate
that
it. Adios, amigo.
That has been another edition of Real Ones. We have Howard motherfucking Beck back on Fridays, which means our mailbag is next Friday or this Friday coming up, which means realonesmailbag@gmail.com, realonesmailbag@gmail.com, realonesmailbag@gmail.com. Raja is making a confused face like he might not be there. Who knows? Anyways, we will see you guys Friday. Talk to you guys soon. All the shits. Bye. Must be 21 years and older and present in select states. For Kansas, an affiliation with Kansas Star Casino, or 18 and older and present in D.C. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit rghelp.com. Call 1-888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org/chat in Connecticut or visit mdgamblinghelp.org in Maryland. Hope is here. Visit gamblinghelplinema.org or call 1-800-327-5050 for 24/7 support in Massachusetts, or call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY in New York.